Welcome, everyone. Warm welcome to this special seminar at the Refugee Studies Center here at the University of Oxford. My name is Dilar Dirik, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at the Refugee Studies Center. As many people attending this talk will know, earlier this month, 27 people tragically lost their lives in the English Channel trying to cross into the UK, and many of them were from the Kurdistan region of Iraq, also called Southern Kurdistan. And at the same time, for several months now, many refugees have been camping in freezing temperatures at the Belarus-Poland border. Children have lost their lives due to the unbearable conditions, lacking adequate access to food, water, shelter, and medicine, and many of them are also from Kurdistan. So this event is to educate more people about this ongoing situation. The UK government's policies, recent policies mean that many more people risk death on their way to safety. And this has been criticized by many rights groups. The situation of the people that we will talk about today reflects a wider trend of externalization practices of states to deter refugees and asylum seekers from reaching their borders. And on that issue, I would like to refer you to the latest issue of Forced Migration Review published by the Refugee Studies Center, and it's downloadable for free, the issue on externalization. So asylum is, of course, a right, and people must have access to safe passages to seek asylum. And of course, it does not matter where the refugees are from. However, the fact that many of the refugees currently losing their lives in the English Channel or at the Poland-Belarus border are Kurdish led us to organize an event that will help us understand the specific situation here. So in a moment, I will introduce our speaker, who will tell us about the situation of Kurdish people currently risking their lives to seek asylum in Europe. He will especially focus on the domestic situation in Kurdistan. He will help us understand why so many people are currently fleeing from a region that has long been portrayed as a stable and open part of Iraq, and which in the minds of many Kurdish people also symbolizes the hope for a stable homeland after decades of genocide, mass forced displacement, political violence, and sanctions. So our speaker today is Kamal Chomani. He was a well-known and well-respected critical voice from Kurdistan. Kamal Chomani is a journalist, a political analyst, and the editor of the Kurdistan Times, which is an independent news outlet, news analysis and commentary outlet focusing on Kurdistan and the Middle East. He's a graduate student at the Willy Brandt School of Public Policy at Erfurt University in Germany. And he was formerly a non-resident fellow at Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy. Kamal Chomani has contributed to many different outlets, including Al Monitor, Foreign Policy, 1001 Iraqi Thoughts, and The National Interest, and many others. So this talk is being recorded, and it will be available on the Refugee Studies Center YouTube channel afterwards. We will take questions from the audience. I ask everyone to please stay close to the topic due to our time limitations, and I will read the questions to our speaker after his presentation. So I kindly ask attendants to please write their questions on the Q&A function here on Zoom. And there are also several colleagues from the Refugee Studies Center here. So if they would like to share their thoughts and their comments on UK migration policy, externalization, or anything else, they're more than welcome to do so. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to virtually welcome Kamal Chomani to the Refugee Studies Center. Bkhair Hati, and the floor is yours.
Zor spas Dilar, and thanks so much for the invitation. Thanks for the Refugee Studies Center of the Oxford University, and hello everyone. And yeah, so I have prepared the presentation. So I will start with the presentation about why all in a sudden this influx happened of the refugees happened. So let me, yeah. So the question is, why are Kurdish people risking their lives to seek asylum? And as you know, during the history, we have been reading news and seeing the Kurds leaving and fleeing their countries, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria for the last 50, 70 years, fleeing from repression, persecution, killing, genocide, massacres. However, it's very strange, as Dilar mentioned at the beginning the Kurdistan region of Iraq was hope for the Kurdish people especially after 2003, and all in a sudden, all the people are fleeing the Kurdistan region. So why people are leaving the Kurdistan region? So first of all, for those, I'm sure everyone knows about Kurdistan and familiar. However, Kurdistan as a homeland is there, but as a state, as a country, is not. However, during the First World War, the Kurdistan was divided into 4 parts, and Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Iraq. And although the Kurds are still fleeing their countries, however, this evening we will rather focus on the Kurds in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. And as you know, the Kurds of Iraq in the northern part of the country. And so the Kurds in Iraq leaving the country is not something new. And especially it happened during 1974. As you know, in 1970, during the ILO revolution led by Mullah Mustafa Barzani, there was an agreement. It was called March Agreement, 11 March Agreement, where the Kurdish people in the north of Iraq were offered a semi-autonomous region we call Hukm al-Dhati, a self-rule. And the self-rule, it continued from 1970 until 1974, when there was the Algerian agreement between Iran and between Iran and Iraq. And then the agreement was dismantled, the revolution dissolved, and the revolution ended. And then Kurds were displaced mainly into Iran, and then from Iran they started fleeing to the other parts of the world. And during this period from 1974 to 1991, until the Kurdish uprising in 1991, so the Kurds have always been fleeing the country due to persecution, repression, oppression, genocide perpetrated and committed by the former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. However, in 1991, the Kurdistan region of Iraq became a semi-autonomous region after the Gulf War, and Saddam withdrew. There was an uprising. And then from 1991 to 1994, there was a sort of stability in the region, although there was a lot of economic hardship and problems. However, in 1994, we had 2 ruling parties. The parties who were fighting against Saddam Hussein after in 1994 started a civil war among themselves, and killing each other, and all the sorts of war crimes were committed. So as you know, in the map above, so Kurdistan was officially divided into the KDP zone, Kurdistan Democratic Party led by Masoud Barzani, and PUK, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan led by former Iraqi President Jalal Talabani. Jalal Talabani, he's no more now. However, Masoud Barzani is still leading the party, and the PUK is led by his 2 sons now. So again, it's continued this Kurds fleeing the country because of the KDP and PUK civil war, economic hardship, repression, and oppression, as happened before 90s. And then after 2003, when Iraq was invaded, or as we say, liberated by the United States and coalition forces, so it was a sort of stability, economic booming, and there was a sort of stability, especially as compared to Iraq. And then in 2009 to 2013, there was reverse migration. So many Kurds in Europe and in North America, they started returning to Kurdistan. And this economic booming continued until 2013, when before the start of ISIS. And also at that time in 2013, there was the prime minister, who is now the president of Kurdistan, Nechirvan Barzani. He started the economic independence program, which he started dealing with Turkey, exporting oil independently. So the promise were never met, and the Kurdistan fell into financial crisis. And then the problem is that dispute is also started with Baghdad, and then to add some salt to the injury, and then the ISIS war started in 2014. So Iraqi government also was in financial crisis. They cut the Kurdistan regional 17th budget share from the budget that they were sending to the Kurdistan region. So the problem became much bigger. So in 2014 until now, that's continuing. People started more fleeing the country, especially due to the ISIS war and economic hardship and financial crisis. And apart from the Kurds have always fleeing during those times, but Yazidis that they faced the genocide in 2014, so they also started fleeing the country. And then later the Yazidis, although they stayed in the campus in the Kurdistan region, but because neither the Kurdistan regional government nor the Iraqi government were able to reach a prosperous agreement, and the international community was also failed to bring all the disputed actors in Sinjar into a real agreement. That's why they are more and more disappointed. So Yazidis are always fleeing the country. And you might have seen also on the Belarus and Poland border, many of them were also Yazidis. And then we also have in 2004, 2001, 2011 until now, so many young Kurdish graduate educated, especially the doctors, when they realized that the country is no more safe, the country is no more providing their dreams, so they also left the country. And then we also had secondary migration. Many Kurds in Iran, many Kurds in Turkey, they are fleeing the country because of the Iranian and Turkish oppression, and then in the hope that they start living in Kurdistan. But the Kurdistan somehow is also controlled by Iran and Turkey, so they cannot stay longer. They face a lot of security problems, so they also leave the Kurdistan region and coming to Europe or North America. But why another wave of refugee influx happening in the Kurdistan region? And as we see right now on the border of Belarus and Poland. So for me, I have tried to understand, but I have provided a few key reasons. First of all, corruption. Anyone in Kurdistan you talk to, they are disappointed from the region. They are leaving the region simply because of corruption, and corruption in all its forms. I'll try to just give a few examples. Kurdistan region is oil-dependent region. We are exporting about producing about 600,000 barrels per day. However, which is the main budget of the Kurdistan region, more than 90%. But if you ask anyone in the Kurdistan region, what's happening to the revenues? Everyone says we don't know. But let's say, recently the Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Rewaz, she was talking to the media, and then this is her quote: "The KRG's oil revenues are approximately $900 million per month. However, only $350 million is claimed by the financial ministry. No, I am not aware of all the oil revenues." That will be also the answer of any members of parliament. I just had a phone call with a member of parliament. He said the same. So, that's the situation in the Kurdistan region. And if you ask me what's happening to this money, to the revenues, so we have two political parties, two duopoly, that they have controlled everything in the Kurdistan region. Their media, the political parties, the militias, the families, their business, everything is funded by the public money. And then look at the KRG. Since 2013, the KRG, the Kurdistan Regional Government, has not been able to draft a budget, an annual budget law. So if you do not have a budget law, how can we know how are the expenditures? So arbitrarily, the Prime Minister decides how the budget should be spent. So in one of my courses this year, we have a course in formal politics. So I think this really describes how the situation in terms of corruption in Kurdistan. So the Kurdistan is completely, pure particularism. There's a clientelist government, two political parties. If you are with one of the government, with one of the political parts, everything will be provided. At the beginning in 90s or the beginning of 2000s, so there were a lot of revenues. There was a lot of Iraqi, flow of dollars from Iraq and also from the international community. And the population was a smaller population. So they could provide to many. But now, we have a very young society. Every year, about 25,000 graduates we have in the Kurdistan region. So the KRG cannot provide, the KDP and PUK cannot provide this particularism for all. So what happens? People get disappointed. And power distribution is a monopoly. And we have two political parties, as I said. Just, each time when I talk about the Kurdistan region, so I talk a lot about Barzanis and Talibanis, and someone will be confused. Like Masoud Barzani, who is the leader of the KDP, but he plays the role of supreme leader of Kurdistan. His son is the prime minister. His son-in-law, and who is also his cousin, his nephew, is the president of Kurdistan region. So this has been the situation since 90s. And also from the other side of Kurdistan, PUK zone, we have Talabani family. Like, it was Jalal Talabani, now it says there was one of his cousins and his two sons. It's now his two sons. Bafel and Quba, they are controlling everything. And they claim everything. Their companies, if you consider Kurdistan as a state, who owns Kurdistan? Like you cannot differentiate between the public good and the private good. There are companies belonging to Barzani family. There are companies belonging to Talabani families or the people within the two political bureaus of KDP and PUK. Other than that, okay, we have some sort of other businesses, other businessmen or businesswomen. However, you can say 90% belongs to them. And then the distribution of public good is absolutely unfair. And let's just look at media outlook in Kurdistan. All the media is owned by the majority of big corporations, is either claimed by Talabani family or Barzani family. And all the media, are funded by the Kurdistan, by the oil money that instead of providing for the public, they provide for their own clients. And then it's not only, corruption, it creates a lot of problems. It creates migration. We have civil war due to corruption, authoritarianism, social and political turmoil, unemployment, etc., etc. And then we have, due to corruption, eroding democratic institutions, no agreement on constitutional embedding of KRG, Kurdistan Region of Iraq. Still, we do not have a constitution, so that based on that constitution, we will rule the country. And just to, give an example on how corruption, is killing the democratic institution. In 2015, there were some problems between the opposition, who was the opposition, an opposition leader was the Speaker of Parliament. He wanted to change the presidential law or amend the presidential law because Masoud Barzani had extended his presidency illegally. So the KDP, because they have militias, they have controlled the security force, the police, the intelligence, they denied the entry for the Speaker of Parliament. The Speaker of Parliament He was able to visit any parliaments around the world, including he gave one of the speeches in the House of Commons in London, but he was not allowed to go back to Erbil for 2 years until the parliament's term ended, and then a new parliament was formed. So that's the situation. Now we have in Kurdistan a lot of social division. Every now and then, you see one, a lot of this division, and also rise of tribalism. Now tribes are strong as they were before, and you see in the elections, one of the tribal leaders, he runs or she runs for the elections. He or she will be voted by the entire tribe, and we saw especially within the KDP, and that's why the majority of the KDP members of parliament are coming from the Hawk. That they brought they based on tribes, they are voting for the candidates. And then one of the biggest issues, which is due to corruption, it happened because of corruption, is unemployment. As I said, we have a very young population, and every year about 24,000 or 25,000 new graduates we have. We have 35 universities in Kurdistan. Some of them are private. And however, for these people that the graduates put aside, let alone that many are in the market, they don't study, but that they are, active labor force. However, since 2003, if you ask anyone what the KRG has done, nothing. And the KRG has failed to create problems. In the meantime, because the KRG is failing to bring about some reforms, so many entrepreneurs and many factories are being closed. I think 3,000 factories have been closed because, because of the financial crisis, and the KRG has failed to bring about any reforms. So I had a talk with a member of parliament. Just apart from there, I also report that about 500,000 young under 35 are jobless in Kurdistan region. And so what happens for these youth that they are jobless in Kurdistan? Before, it was the Kurdish society was a very strong, the family was very strong, and also the prices were not that high. So like the nucleus family was always able to provide food, shelter, and a pocket money for the young. But now the youth, they also have dreams to seek their dreams, to practice their life, to have their individual life. So they have only three choices. Either they should stay in Kurdistan region in this insecurity and poverty, or they should protest. As you have seen, the protest, students protest, they have already started, and today also they resumed. And when they protest, what will happen? They are either being arrested, and they are being cracked down. Since 2006, we have had regular protests. In 2011, when Arab Spring started, we also had a sort of Kurdish Spring. But all the protests have been cracked down. No promises have been met. No concerns have been met, have been addressed. So what they should do in this insecurity, and you protest, you will be arrested, you will be tortured. So there is another choice, which is fleeing the country and being stuck on the borders. And then we have, apart from this, we have also insecurity. And insecurity, I will divide into three sorts of insecurity. Regional insecurity. You know that I think every now and then in media we say Turkish airstrike is killing the civilians in the Kurdistan region. And as you know, the PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party, are based, their base are on the borders between Iran, Turkey, and Kurdistan region. So Turkey has not only started, attacking the PKK in those areas, but also like targeting the civilians purposely, so that to pressure the PKK, and also to create tensions between the civilians and the PKK. So since 2015, when the peace talks failed, about 99 people have been being killed and injured due to the Turkish strikes. Many villages have been evacuated, and some youth and some people of those areas, they have also left Kurdistan region. That's also Iranian shelling the borders, Iranian supporting the pro-Iran militias. There have been drone attacks in Erbil and also on against the US forces in the region. And then we have reemergence of ISIS. ISIS is now strong, so there have been a few attacks, and last night there were also attacks attacking the villagers, attacking the Peshmerga forces, killing, I think so far 20 Peshmergas have been killed. And then also like weaponization of refugees. So the refugees have also been used by KRG, by Turkey and Belarus for a reason. Turkey, is very classical or modern Turkish policy by Erdogan using the refugees. Belarus following the same. The KRG also doesn't care about people living Kurdistan because of two reasons. First, those people, if they don't live in Kurdistan, they protest. The KDP and PUK, they don't want people to protest. At the same time, the KRG, they want, as Safin Zey in one comments, he said that, if the European Union wants the refugees to stop, they should aid the Kurdistan region. So the KRG, because since 1991, the KRG has been funded, provided a lot of official and unofficial aid from the international community, especially US and EU. So recently, those aid has diverted to other areas or maybe stopped. And the KRG wants this aid to continue. And I think, it's one of the reasons the KRG doesn't care as well, or wants to see the refugees on the border. And then we have some internal insecurity, like the withdrawal of US Army in Iraq. US invaded Iraq, and now they are they may withdraw, as it happened in 2011, they withdraw. We had in 2014 the ISIS. And then if they now withdraw without resolving the problems that they created, so people are very much worried about the situation. And then rise of militias in Iraq, especially pro-Iran militias. At some point, there might be a civil war. We don't know. And also the militias within the Kurdistan region, they're also stronger. Just to, let's not forget, in Kurdistan region, we do not have a unified national Peshmerga force. We have Peshmerga force of KDP and PUK that they are protecting, defending the interests of these two parties and families. So people cannot live under the rule of militias. And, the KDP and PUK have further, militarized the Kurdistan, the Kurdistan region. And then we also have the disputed areas between the KRG and Baghdad, especially those in the disputed areas, including the Yazidis. There is a security vacuum. Neither KRG nor Iraqi government are able to control the areas. And then it has created a lot of fears for the people. That's why they cannot return. If they return, they will be massacred, as last night happened. The ISIS attacked one of the villages in Kirkuk, in the hope of killing, and people left the village. And a few days ago, they just killed some others in Mahmoud area, which is about, I think, 45 kilometers from southeast Erbil, I think. And then climate change. Iraq, there was a report in Al-Mada a few days ago that Iraq will cease to have rivers by 2040 at the current rate of decline in water resources. And then there was recently the Iraqi president, he published an article in the Financial Times that Iraq is classified as the 5th most vulnerable nation in the world because of water and food shortages and extreme temperatures. And that has created so many problems for the people. And Turkey and Iran are also building dams in their areas. So the Iraqi people, including the Kurdish people, are becoming the victim of this. They can completely stop the flow of the rivers that are starting from Iran and Turkey. And the Iraqi government, and also the KRG, because there are all these problems in Iraq and Kurdistan region, so they are unable to have very serious negotiations with these two countries to resolve the problem. And the international community, again, they have not been able to resolve this issue. And then one of the very big issues in the Kurdistan region that's happening is the rising of authoritarianism, and especially about this man, Masroor Barzani, who's the Prime Minister of Kurdistan. So if you, in the picture, you see he has some booklets, and the booklets were given to him by the Metro organization, which is a freedom of expression advocacy. There were just in 2020, there were about 2,000 free speech violations. Look at the picture at the above. So they are known by Badin and Trials. So these people, majority of journalists and activists, and a few protesters. They started protests in Duhok in 2019 and 2020. So they started the protests, and So the protests that they started, they were arrested, tortured, and some of them also left Kurdistan. And why? Because Masroor Barzani fabricated some lies, and in the name that these people are establishing like an armed group, so as to carry out terrorist acts, killing the son of Masroor Barzani, and also carrying out some terrorist acts. And also they were also convicted and charged on espionage, and their crime was nothing other than they had a Facebook group discussing about the situation in Kurdistan first, and secondly, the journalists and activists, they had some meetings with the United Kingdom consulates in Erbil, with Germany and the United States. And especially they made a big deal of their meeting with Germany and the United States. That's why, the entire diplomatic community in Erbil, they denounced those trials. Almost the entire Kurdish society denied and denounced the trials. But Masroor Barzani, because of his authoritarian ambitions, he continued. And he continued. Some people have already been convicted, 65 years into prison, and some trials are continuing, about 80 journalists and activists. So there's a situation in Kurdistan, you can be convicted just because of writing a comment on Facebook, or posting something on Twitter, on Facebook. In this situation, the youth cannot stay in a situation like this. Once they have a hope, of course, they leave the Kurdistan region. And before talking about why the EU and UK are responsible of refugees influx, I want to share the situation of the refugees on the border, so that you know how inhuman the UK, the US, the EU response to the refugees have been. So and I have subtitled what they are saying on the border. As you know, about 8,000 refugees are on the border, stranded on the Belarus and Poland border. Some of 2-3 have died so far. Some of them were forced to return to Kurdistan region. I think 1,200, something like this. But still, there are people there. So let's watch this video for 2 minutes, and then we will continue.
أو الدار واي بوكنا واتروشي يجات يبغى 3000 نفر دعوات عليكم أم فيديو دعوة لما بسالي أول ما كان أم خلك أنا زاد انتهت أوبرو يرو ما خلك باشا كاكا وش يعني خلقي كردة من نعلم بربرسكان بقريب ومانو مانتيرنو بيانو نو بكردستان دعوة لبربرساني كردة كم تكليف لبربرساني كيتي أوروبا بكن دعوة لأوروبا بكن لألمانيا بكن لبولندا بكن لبلاروسيا كان أم خلق نجاتي بكاتا أوبرو نجاتي دن أو خاكي بولندا أو تلبين معنا سيري خجاني خلق كن سيري كان أو همو جياني خلق بدبخت بوا همو بدبخت بوا دعوة لأن أرتيكم أم فيديوكو خوي بلاو كاتو لي نبرت وكو خوي بلاو كاتو دعوات عليكم يا رمتي الخلق بدن لبرسيا مردن لاتينيا مردن صار معنا والله بشوان أرواح ناقص شوار ليلة يشتا عيش نبوة يشتا حفتي كب فرباران بكسي درناتي جيني فيريا يا نخوشه يا منالي نخوشه دعوة لأن أرتيكم فريا يا خلق كيف فرمو أوش يعني منالي كرد ليلة باشا شو تابعني أقريان بوكانو شو تابعني أقريان بوكانو همويان دمرن سيدي كان أوش يعني كردة همو برسيانا همو سرمايانا دعوات عليكم فرياي أم خلق كون بس نقبو ديبورت بو أوديو خلق باري دعوة خلق بار خاني فروشتو خلق مالي فروشتو خلق تواناي أوين يبقرتو دعوة لأن أرتيكم أمها بياري منوكو خوي بقيني
So you saw the situation of the refugees stranded on the border, very desperate, very, very horrible situation. However, the response of the European Union was not something that anyone would expect in a humanitarian crisis. And in fact, it could have been managed easily, but they didn't want. But why I think EU and also UK are also responsible of refugee influx that happened. So first of all, if Kurdistan is safe, why do the UK, the United States, Germany, Netherlands, France keep their forces there? They still have forces in the region, and why the Europeans fear that ISIS or some other issues will happen, affect them in Europe. That's why they should be there. But people, they do not have the right to leave their country because of all the problems I talked about. And secondly, the US and EU support for Iraq in Iran-Iraq war and later Iraq invasion in 2003 will hold the EU and US responsible for what's happening. And they just came, either support Saddam in the 1980s because Iran was a more horrible enemy, and then they invaded Iraq, and then just leaving the country, they are responsible for what's happening. And then EU and UK, as well as US, they are aiding, training, and arming the KDP and the PUK Peshmerga. And their policy is still stability before democracy. And this policy needs to be changed, because this is the reason why the KDP and PUK are on power, because they have been aided, supported by the international community. And the international community, those EU and UK as well, they're unable to differentiate between the KRG as the government and the people and the KDP. The majority of aid goes to these two political parties, and these two political parties, as you have seen since ever since, using their militaries, using their militias to suppress people, to crack down on the protests, to crack down on the dissent. So this situation, I think, or I believe, makes these countries responsible. And look at for example, UK and EU migration policy. That's the case of the fiancé who died in the Channel, and why the UK and EU countries, okay, some people may not be legally abided to come to Europe, but someone whose fiancé is in Kurdistan, he should be able, or she should be able, to get a visa to come to Europe to rejoin with the family, with his fiancé, with his husband, wife, whatever. So that's really something is very inhuman, and it should be changed. And then if we look for the conclusions are always very difficult, but all the internal, regional, and climate-related issues together have made the people hopeless, and they see no future in Kurdistan. And when you see no future in Kurdistan, as I have talked to a lot of people, they say, okay, we became the victims of everything in the Middle East that's happening in the Kurdistan region, but at least we can try to build a better future for our children. And of course, many of them, they don't understand how life is difficult in Europe as well. They don't know about the migration rules. They don't know about the how difficult is to someone to let's say integrate and also get asylum status or humanitarian status in Europe. And however, when this happened, did the KRG know about the crisis earlier? And for that, I talked to the Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Rawaz Fayaq, who confirmed to me that there are two parliament's comments. They had prepared reports to hold sessions to discuss about the crisis that's emerging, because there were reports that many people are leaving the Kurdistan region. Smugglers had already started, talking to people in the social media. Many people had died on the Aegean Sea, and every now and then there was some reports about the people leaving the Kurdistan region. So the parliament tried, the two parliament committees started preparing reports and holding sessions. However, because of some conflicts within the parliament, they were not held. So why the parliament knew about the crisis, but the KRG didn't know about the crisis? And when it happened, the prime minister and also the speaker, the spokesperson of KRG, as well as we have a foreign relations department, let's say our foreign minister, they accused the PKK to be the reason for the influx of the refugees. So it was not something new. Everyone knew about that. However, the KRG didn't talk about it. And once it happened, and then they started to talk to the world leaders in the hope, claiming that they are responsible leaders and they want to resolve the crisis. And I believe that the influx of the refugees will not end. And this happened because this road had not been tried. The refugees, the people of Kurdistan region, especially the youth, they have always tried to come through Greece, but the families are not able, especially the elders and also the families with children. And we have seen a lot of reports and how people are, dying in the sea. So they realized that this road is easier. That's why they came through this road, because it was safe. And if people are, if they get a chance, they will definitely come. So next spring, now it's very cold and it's difficult for the youth to come. But next spring, definitely the same youth that they try to come through Belarus and Belarus, they come through Greece and Turkey and then Greece and or maybe Bulgaria. So if the UK, US, European Union, they want to have a solution, there should be some structural, solutions for the issue. They should stop supporting the authoritarian regimes in the Kurdistan region. You cannot talk about, you cannot resolve the issue whereas you legitimize the sort of authoritarianism that the two families have established in the Kurdistan region. So there should be supporting to build a government that's both accountable and fair and constructed society that embraces universalism as the supreme principle governing relations between the people and government and among the people themselves. And to achieve this, as I said, the EU, UK, US, and international community need to pressure the KRG and Iraqi government, first to resolve their problems, in the disputed areas, and also to bring about radical reforms and turn their aids, that the aid Europe is providing, US providing for the Iraq and also the KRG, to be conditional. You cannot just aid militias and the same militias kill their own citizens. And aid should go for development, not to the KDP and PUK militias. And then the EU and US should help Iraq to confront the Turkish and Iranian aggressive policies toward the KRG and Iraq. Because these two countries, they don't want a stabilized Iraq. They don't want to see prosperity in Iraq. They want always to use Iraq as, to seek their interests and their economic and geopolitical interests.